Hello besties, welcome back to my channel and welcome to arguably the best video of the year, my new bullet journal setup for 2025. I am so excited to film this video because this journal is absolutely stunning. Like, it's gorgeous and the setup is going to be super fun, so I cannot wait to show it to you guys. The journal itself is from Sophie. I had a video a couple weeks ago asking you guys to choose between this one or a coppery brown one that I also got in the mail from them, and I think you guys preferred the copper one, but I mean, I preferred this one, not gonna lie. So I went with my gut and I picked this one. Hope you guys don't mind, but I will have a link to Sophie in the description box below with the discount code. Not sponsored at all, I just want to throw that out there in case you're looking for a new journal for the new year. But anyway, getting into the setup. So I wrote my name on the first name page and then I'm getting into the cover page here for my opening setup. Now, usually I don't have a huge artwork piece on the very front cover of a bullet journal, but I started doing this last year and I really like doing it. So there's no reason in my head to do a super basic setup for the beginning of a journal. I used to do that a lot and create incredibly minimal setups, and I'm not gonna lie, besides the artwork, the setup is pretty minimal, but I do enjoy taking the time to make some very beautiful artwork for the very first page in a journal. I think it is worthwhile, I think it is really beautiful, and I think it's a great way to just start the journal off on a great note. This is gonna be my 6th year bullet journaling, so I used to be very intimidated by starting a new journal, but now after so many years, I'm just kind of used to it and I'm less scared to start a new journal. It's more like an exciting process for me. So I really like, doing something more maximal as far as the art goes. Like I said, I did this for my 2 journals in 2024 and now I'm just carrying the theme onto 2025. Now the question you may ask is, why am I drawing a bird? And to be honest, it's mostly just because it looks good. There is no metaphor or some reason behind drawing a bird. I just saw this picture here on the screen on Pinterest and I thought it was super beautiful, so I'm recreating it, and I am going to change the colors a bit whenever I actually color it in, but I thought it was just super cool. It was a nice blend between an almost realistic drawing of a bird with these flowers coming around them, but also there are more abstract art pieces that really make it stand out. I loved the little swirls and circles and dots that surround this bird, so although it is a very realistic drawing as far as the coloring, the actual design is more artistic, and I feel like it was a great way to start the bullet journal. It doesn't really match the cover of the journal because the cover is dark brown with gold, and that's not the color palette of this final drawing, but I do think that the swirls and the flowers kind of emulate the cover of the journal, so it kind of fits, it kind of matches, although it's not perfect. I am using a fine liner in the size 02 for all of this work, so it's fine enough that I can do really detailed stuff like the feathers at the head of the pelican and also the little details on the belly, that kind of thing, but it's also thick enough that it really pops. I didn't want something that was too fine because with my particular art style, I like for the line art to really stand out. I also used a slightly larger line art for 2025 written in cursive. It's in the size 03, so literally just barely bigger. That way it's not too obvious, but it is just a little bit thicker. It's in the bottom right of this page. It kind of blends in with the wing of the bird, so it may be a little hard to see, but I think whenever everything is colored in, it might be a little more obvious. Again, I see a lot of setups with 2024 or 2025 in huge letters in the middle of a spread, and nothing wrong with that at all, okay? I did that last year in my own bullet journal. I think that that's a very classic style. It always works, but I want to do something a little bit more delicate, a little bit more me, I guess. I want to do something that I really felt proud of, and I'm very happy to say that I'm very proud of the setup whenever it's finally done. If you guys saw the video that I posted last week, it was my bullet journal flip through of my journal from July to December of 2024. Now, if you haven't seen that video, you definitely should go watch it. It was really fun to film, but in that video, I will say that I had a little bit of a lack of creativity for the past 6 months. It's a mix of being busy and not super creatively inspired and stuff like that. I still have a lot of really good spreads in there, I think, but since I've been bullet journaling for 6 years, I do think that I go through ebbs and flows of really good journals and then just kind of meh journals, and I think that my last journal had some good moments, but there were some disappointing moments in that one. For example, the very first spread that I did in that journal was a Cinderella drawing for the opening spreads, and I really liked how it turned out at the time, but over time the alcohol markers set kind of funny, and again, you have to go back and watch that video if you haven't to see what it looks like. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But all that to say that I think that that first art in that journal not being my favorite thing ever, it kind of gave me a bad taste in my mouth almost for the rest of that journal. So I'm really excited that this particular setup is something that makes me very proud and excited because I just feel like the vibes are better going into the next 6 months, and I cannot wait to continue creating content for you guys and just see what I come up with in my bullet journal for the first 6 months of 2025. I want to talk a little bit about the process of me coloring because I think this is one of my more realistic coloring styles. Now, to be very honest, I was following the shading style of the reference picture, which I'll pop here on the screen again just for you to see. So it's very similar to this. Credits to whoever the artist is for that. But basically, I'm using 2 different shades of beige, 1 shade of a medium brown, 1 shade of a warm gray, And then I'm using orange for the bird, and I'm also going to pull out a couple shades of pinks later to do like the flowers and stuff. With water-based markers, I always want to start light and then go darker. So I use the lightest shade of beige to add a lot of shadows on the wing, on the bottom of the belly, around the head where like the feathers were layering and stuff, but I kept the main part of the head very white with a lot of like space left uncolored. And then I go back in and add some more shading with the darker beige, with a little bit of that warm gray, a little bit of that darkish brown. I have a little bit of orange on the beak, on the feathers, over the head, and there's also like some random stripe over the belly that I saw in the reference picture that was orange, so I kept that one how it was. And it was basically a lot of going back and forth and just making sure that things were blended by using the midtones to blend back and forth between the light and the dark, things like that. To be honest, water-based markers do not blend as well as other mediums like paint or alcohol markers, for example, so I have to be okay with a little bit of streakiness in my artwork, but because I've been using water-based markers for so long, I am very used to this. It definitely does not bother me having some streakiness. And also because the bird is like covered in feathers, I thought that the streakiness kind of made sense because it kind of emulates, you know, bird feathers. They're not perfect, they're going to be a little streaky as well, so I felt like it kind of all came together in that way. And then I'm using the pink here to draw the flowers. I'm using a very light pink for the base of the flowers, and I'm going to use the orange that I used for the beak to draw these little like swirly bits coming out of the top and on the left. And then I'm going to go in with a darker pink and add more shadows to the flowers, which I think turned out really, really good. That one was really satisfying. It was just a combination of an Ahuhu Pupe water-based marker and a Crayola Super Tip in like a darker pink. For some reason, those two blended really, really well together, so I thought the flowers looked fantastic. And then I'm using a very dark maroonish color to do like the circles behind the head of the pelican and on the side and things like that. I think the original drawing had this in blue, but I really wanted to do a very warm pinky orangey color palette, so I switched it to this dark maroon color, and I think it turned out really, really, really cool. Now you may notice that there is a lot of pencil sketching on the very right of the spread, and that is because, although it's kind of hard to see right now because the pages are clamped together with the binder clip, this is going to be a Dutch door setup. So I actually cut out multiple pages, just a little bit, trimming off a couple inches off the, more like 1 inch honestly, off the right side of the spread. So they are a little shorter, so the little pencil sketch that you can see is actually like 3 spreads behind. So we will get to that at the very end of this video, but we are going to go in order. So if you can see that pencil sketch, we will get to that in just a minute, but all the other spreads in the setup will be in this like Dutch door that I've already cut out before I filmed the video. You will see in just a second whenever I start actually flipping through what I'm talking about, but that explains why there's like more pencil that I haven't erased yet. It's because we haven't gotten to that spread quite yet. So now the cover page is done, and I'm very, very excited about it. So this is the Dutch door that you guys can see with the multiple pages. We're going into the next page. We'll come back to those in the end later. So I'm starting on the left with a grid spacing cheat sheet, and then I'm going to have a year to glance on the right. So because I am using a Dutch door, this page is cut off a little bit, so you actually can only see the numbers 3 to 26 horizontally at the top. I cut off like where the numbers 1 and 2 would be, so it does look a little funny, but I think that the purpose of the grid spacing sheet still makes sense. If you guys don't know what this spread is, it's basically a way to measure out different dimensions in future bullet journaling spreads by already marking it on this spread, so I know how many dots to count. For example, I know now that I can divide a spread in half horizontally by counting 13 spaces across and vertically by counting 19 spaces down. I made an entire video on my channel explaining how to make this spread in any bullet journal in any size, so I will have that linked down below if you're interested in creating your own grid spacing sheet. Or if you have an A5 bullet journal, you can always just screenshot this, and this will give you the dimensions for a third and a half. I didn't do quarters this time, I usually do, but you know, quarter is just half of half, so I figured I could do that in my head if I needed to. But yeah, feel free to screenshot if you need to. And then on the right side of the spread is where I'm going to put my year at a glance page. Now this spread is honestly for aesthetics more than anything. The next spread I'm going to do is going to be a future log where I'm going to have the exact same calendars written out again. Okay, so it is a little tedious doing the exact same calendars twice, especially because I literally handwrite all of these calendars, so it does take quite a bit for me to like write every day of the year from January to June, but at least I'm only doing 6 months and not not 12, okay? But truly and honestly, I just love how a year at a glance spread looks. I think it's super, super satisfying to see all of the calendars. And because there's going to be so much artwork on the right side of the spread whenever the Dutch store is done, I tried to make my spreads very, very minimal. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but I left a lot of margin space in this spread, so it honestly didn't take long to do at all because it's very simple and minimal. Now, if you're loving this setup so far and you like the idea of starting a bullet journal for this new year, but you're thinking to yourself, I don't really have time to make my own spreads, or I'm not really that artistic, don't you worry, I got you covered, because I want to talk to you guys about this bullet journal that I sell on my online shop. I have what's called the undated bullet journal that I created last year. It's a completely undated 12-month bullet journal that has all the art already drawn in for you in black line art. It's also like a coloring book, so you can color in the art and design it yourself and customize it. And also, because all of the months are undated, you can start the bullet journal whenever and just fill in the calendars for whatever dates it is in that month. So if you want to skip a month or start in the middle of the year, like for an academic planner, things like that, it's incredibly customizable. I wanted to yap about it a little bit on here because this is a new bullet journal setup, obviously. So I know a lot of you guys are going to be thinking about whether or not you want to start something like this in the new year. And if you're new to bullet journaling and this looks like a lot of work, I totally understand you, which is why I created the bullet journal, to kind of simplify the process for you. So you're like half bullet journaling, you know what I'm saying? So if you're interested in the undated bullet journal, I have it on my online shop. I will link it down below, and also the link is here on the screen. I'm letting you know in advance, I only ship to the US at the moment, so if you're an international bestie, I'm so sorry, but I would love if you guys want to check this out. It'd also be a great Christmas gift, just so you know. Alright, so moving into the next spread in the setup, we're going to be doing my future log. Now, like I said, I'm about to draw the exact 6 calendars that I just drew on the previous page on this page yet again. Is it redundant? Is it pointless? Yes and yes. But I think it just looks so good on the first page that I couldn't help but having it over there as well. So the future log, if you're wondering, is a way to look at a year at a glance and plan things very far in advance. So usually whenever people do bullet journaling, now this could change for anybody, but usually, and what I usually do is I do a month at a time of planning. So the week before January starts, I'll make my January spreads. The week before February starts, I'll make my February spreads, etc. Right? So for example, if I have a birthday or a doctor's appointment in May and I'm finding out about it in January, I'm not going to have a place to put that birthday or that appointment because it's so far in advance and I don't have my setup done yet. That is where a future log comes in handy. I can just drop random dates, events, appointments, things like that in this spread next to the corresponding month, and then whenever the month comes around and I do end up creating the setup, I will just transfer all the dates into the monthly calendar. Now, I do have a calendar on my computer that I also use for things like this, like my iCalendar. I used it more in the past 6 months because I didn't really use my future log in my blue journal at the end of 2024 very often. However, because I have a new journal, I'm very excited about using this, and I created the spread just for this purpose. I have kind of missed using a future log a little bit, so I brought it back this setup, and I'm going to be definitely putting at least a couple birthdays, exam dates for finals next semester, things like that over here. It just is very helpful for planning very far in advance. And also, I would say that the same type of migration process from a yearly spread to a monthly setup works on the weekly basis too, because also for my bullet journal, I usually set up weekly spreads like every week. So every Sunday I will do a new weekly spread. Recently this hasn't been the exact same. I've been kind of making weekly spreads in bunches based on whenever I have time to do so. But all that being said, what I'm saying here is if you have something on your weekly, monthly setup that you need to transfer into a later week, keeping it on the monthly calendar, like for example, at the beginning of January, you have an exam at the end of January, right? Keeping it in the January calendar until you create the weekly spread for the end of January is another way to store things long term before you create that eventual spread. But once again, if you have your undated bullet journal from Mingo Studios online shop, the entire setup is already done for you. So you can literally put dates wherever you need to because the entire journal is already pre-made. Again, a little bit of self-promo, but I couldn't help it. Like I keep saying, this setup is pretty minimal for me, I'm not gonna lie. I am using quite a bit of color, but like the actual layouts of the spreads are very simple. And I really liked it. I think it was a good balance between very maximal drawings, like the art on the cover page and what you can now see on the right side of the last spread. But the line art, the layout of the spreads themselves, very, very minimal. One technique for doing that is margin space. So you'll notice that for the reading tracker, I have a lot of margin space on the top, left, right, and bottom of this tracker. Now, I read a lot of books every year. I actually have a book channel, if you didn't know. It is called Sophie Joe. I post book vlogs and reading updates and recommendations and things over there. So I'll also have it linked down below as always if you're interested in checking out my book content. But basically, I read about 50 to 60 books every single year. And so in this first half of the year, I'm expecting to read about 25 to 30 books. And there's definitely not space to fit 30 books in this particular tracker. I do have an app, Goodreads and Storygraph, where I also track my books. So I didn't really need to put an entire list for 30 books here. This is more just like for aesthetic purposes and also just for memory's sake. But that being said, I could have expanded this chart to be a little bigger and fill up more of the spread if I wanted to, but I decided on purpose to make it smaller because I wanted to emphasize that margin space. Like there's a lot of white space in this spread and that's totally okay. I'm trying to embrace that a little bit. On the right side, we also have a period tracker. This is obviously where I track my monthly cycle. Once again, I do have an app for this as well on my phone, but I feel like tracking it in your bullet journal is also a good idea just because it looks nice. It's a good way to kind of remind yourself what you've been doing the past 6 months, you know, how your cycle has been, if it's consistent, XYZ. I'm doing a dot for every date of these next couple of months in like vertical lines, and I'll basically just like circle the days where I have my period, when I'm ovulating, etc. You can definitely add a key for this, change it to kind of fit whatever your needs are for your own cycle. But this is the system that works for me. Very, very simple. And again, if I need to elaborate any more, I have my app where I can definitely do that. So finally, moving on to the artwork, which is the last bit of the setup because it is the last spread. This is the artwork, like the pencil drawing that you could see from the cover page when all of the flaps of the Dutch door are closed. But now that they're open, you can see that the art actually extends towards the inside of the spread a little bit more. So basically I have this very vertical design of flowers, circles, and swirls that I basically took from the original cover design. So I told you guys I took the cover design picture as inspiration from Pinterest, but I kind of interpreted those same flower positionings and designs in a different shape by aligning them vertically along the edge of this spread. An exploding feeling because all the curved lines are coming towards the center of the spread. There are petals falling, things like that. And I feel like it was very abstract, very beautiful, honestly. Not to toot my own horn, but I am obsessed with how the spread turned out. I think it was super, super cool. I like that whenever you close the flap, you can only see a little bit of the drawing, but then when you open it, you can see a little bit more. It's just like a little surprise when you get to the end of the setup in here. Now, I'm also going to be coloring in everything the exact same way that I colored them in on the cover page, right? So orange on the swirls, pink flowers with that dark pink shading that I've been doing this entire setup. Very, very similar. It's a very repetitive process, but I really thought it was quite satisfying to draw, so I didn't really mind that it was so repetitive. And I'm also going to be using that maroon color for the circles and the little dots inside the circle. And then I'm going to be coloring in the entire right side of this, what do you call this, like the edge of the spread, I guess. Basically where you can see the Dutch door when all the pages are closed, I'm going to be coloring in that section with a very, very light beige to kind of make it pop. The way I'm explaining it does not make any sense, but you'll see it in just a second how I colored it in, and I'm really like how it turned out. I thought it was super, super cool. And I like how the flowers overlap where the beige stops, if that makes sense. Again, you guys can't see it right now, but give it like 10 seconds. You will understand exactly what I'm trying to say here. Okay, do you guys see it? You see the vibe? You see the vision? I don't know, I'm obsessed. I think it looks very pretty, very feminine, very dainty. And that is the end of the setup. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you got to the end, I really appreciate you. If you are new to my channel and you're just now seeing me, hello, my name is Sophie. I would love for you to stick around on this channel. Subscribe if you want to see more of me. I post bullet journaling videos every single Saturday. Like I said, if you want to check out my undated bullet journal, which I sell on my online shop, themangostudio.com, I will have that linked down below for all of my US besties if you want to go check that one out. The setup was so much fun to do, and I'm so glad I could show it with you guys today. I hope you have the most amazing week ever, and I will see you guys next week for my January bullet journal setup. I'm so excited. Love you guys so much, and I'll see you next week.